Hearing none, how many or who is in favor of Jackie for chair for the school
Aye.
district?
Aye.
Nays? That would be unanimous. Congratulations, Jackie. The meeting is yours. I will return shortly.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. This will be an exciting trip this year. So now we're on to nominations for the vice chair of the Monomoy Regional School District School Committee. Are there any nominations for the vice chair? Sharon?
I nominate Tina Games for vice chair from Harwich.
Second. Second?
Yep.
Any other nominations? Nancy?
I nominate Terry Russell.
Second? Second. Second. So we have two nominations on the floor. Sharon,
Comments?
comments?
So my comment is that we have had past practice of trying to rotate the chair, and although I think pretty much anyone here would be fine for vice chair, and certainly Terry would, he has been before, but I think that Tina is more representative of the voters' recent votes, and I just think that it would be great in our atmosphere that we're in here to have a fresh person.
Any other comments for either nomination? Ms. Scott?
While I agree with what Sharon is saying, and I think we also should just take a moment to explain the practice for in case some people aren't following. Part of our regional agreement is we rotate chair and vice chair every year. So last year's chair was from Harwich. So this year's chair is supposed to be from Chatham, and then the vice chair is the opposite, so that we have a chair as Chatham and a vice chair from Harwich this year. So that's part of what we're doing. And then to follow up, while I think Tina would do a fabulous job as vice chair, I think I won't want to say lack of experience, because that's not really appropriate.
It's okay, you just do.
The limited experience you've had thus far on the school committee, I think a little bit more time, because in less than 6 months, is be my only concern, is so that to kind of get a little bit more school committee experience under your belt before stepping into the vice chair role. So that's where my brain is coming from.
Ms. Stout?
I would like to just say that I believe that that Tina has a lot of leadership capabilities, having been head of the Culture Council and has a breadth of experience in town. And I think that 6 months has given a lot of experience, not too dissimilar from when I nominated Nancy Scott for that role years ago. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Is there any more comments for either nomination? Okay, at this time, I believe we need to do a roll call for each nomination. So we'll start with the first nomination, which was for Tina, and there was a second. So we're going to roll call, starting with Mr. Osceola.
Nay.
Yay? Yay?
Yay.
Nay.
Nay. Yay.
Nay. So that was 1,
Half.
2, 3. It was half and half.
Well, half.
So, we're going to do a roll call for the second nomination. So that would be for vice chair to be Mr. Terry over there. Starting with Mr. Osceola.
Yes, yay.
Nay. Nay.
Nay.
Yay.
Yay.
Nay.
Yay. Okay. Tied again. So,
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Don't Harwich votes have more weight than Chatham votes?
Yes, they do, but I believe we're still equal again. Terry, you're the master of counting those.
I'm sorry,
All right, you
Madam
do it,
Chair.
Nancy. Yeah.
I actually think that we had no Chatham members voting, so they had no, so while the Harwich votes were one vote each, and the Chatham votes were only a half, you have to have one member from each town approving whatever motion, and we don't have that.
So we're still at a standstill. Okay,
Well,
we've had this in
as
the
a-
past.
Madam Chair, as a
Yes.
suggestion.
Yes, sir.
With such highly qualified folks that are running, I would think it best for all of us that I withdraw my nomination and we proceed. Because we've had past experience where we've had ties that just don't go well. So
I believe,
in the light of that, I'll
yeah.
withdraw the nomination if the person who seconded it would.
Does Ms. Scott need to, because it was her nomination, correct? You need to withdraw your nomination? Do you want to withdraw your nomination?
Sure, I will withdraw my nomination.
And are we drawing the second, which was Joanne?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So I think with the withdrawal of the nomination, we don't need to roll call again because it's clear that the votes will stand. And Tina, welcome as the new vice chair of the Monomoy Regional School District.
Thank you very much.
committee.
And Terry,
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks. I look forward to working with you, Jackie, on everybody. Thank you.
Oh, it's gonna be a hoot.
Yeah, be a hoot, that's for sure.
All right, moving on to the next agenda item. We need to approve the minutes from our meeting on Thursday, May 9th, 2019. Are there any comments or corrections that need to be addressed at this time? Ms. Scott?
I move to approve the minutes from May 9th, 2019.
I second it.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Vote carries. We do not have a student representative tonight. Okay, we're gonna move on. Public comment, if there's anyone here to speak right now for public comment. Seeing none, we're gonna be moving forward. Because Dr. Carpenter is away from the table at this time, we're gonna skip recognitions, and we're gonna go direct to the Monomoy Regional Middle School data presentation. Oh, excuse me, we're gonna switch that. We're gonna go to the Harwich Elementary School data presentation.
Flip flop the order.
That
So
sounds
Harwich
perfect.
Elementary's going to go first,
Great.
and the middle school will go afterwards. Tonight, I'm going to be reviewing our progress on our one-year school improvement plan from 2018 to 2019, and also doing a deep dive into the everyday life of some of our teachers and how they use our assessment data to guide our student learning. I really like to start with our Harwich Elementary School vision statement because it is the foundation and the guiding light of everything that we're doing at Harwich Elementary School. This was written in just in January 2018 by our 18-member school council. We have a very rich, diverse cross-section of the community who wrote this together as a team. And our school improvement plan is directly reflected in some of the phrases here in our school improvement plan. Our first focus area for our school improvement plan was the phrase "in partnership with families and the community." And it's very exciting to see how we just have this continuity with the district strategic plan and how nicely that hooks into our current new strategic plan, this first objective under community and family partnerships. Some of the updates and the achievements in this area this year, probably the cornerstone has been the initiation of the Castle in the Clouds revitalization project, and we started that project back in October, and it quickly grew to encompass not just the Castle in the Clouds playground, but also the preschool playground, our playing courts, and the 2 Little League fields behind the Cultural Arts Center. So it is really now more of a community playground project, and that committee also has a rich, diverse representation. Tina is on our committee along with Eric Beebe from Town Rec, and Mark Healy from the Little League and John Larrabee from Monomoy basketball. And so we have all of the stakeholders represented on that. And we're off and going. We awarded the contract for the site plan design on that to DeVellis Rain out of Foxborough. We met with them in April. So right now we're kind of in the quiet waiting period while they're doing what they do best, looking at the site plan, and they will be coming back to us with some concepts a little later in the summer. And our target is to have everything in order so that we can apply for the community preservation funds in October. And so that's an aggressive time frame, but I'm optimistic that we can hit that. In our school council, we also have a very deep-rooted, passionate group that's very committed to the birth to 5 family needs, and that's very reflective of what Superintendent Carpenter shared with us at the last school committee, that there's an overwhelming need for infant and toddler care and expanded preschool experiences. So that's something that we continue to be the champion of at Harwich Elementary. The second phrase here is providing a safe, stable, and joyful environment for our children to learn in. And this really reflects our strategic plan, second objective of social emotional learning. Some of the accomplishments that we've had this year in this one-year plan is the implementation of our second step social emotional learning curriculum in preschool through grade 4. We also have had the continued success of our fantastic positive behavior intervention and supports program, where just in the first year, we're now in our 3rd year, but in the first year we saw a 50% reduction in discipline referrals, which translates into a real increase in time on learning for our students. I'm also very proud of our over 30 teachers at Harwich Elementary that have taken advantage of the trauma courses offered in district by Lesley University. Our first cohort, it just finished the 4th class, the Trauma 4 class, and we have seen a real impact on not just how we've learned more about not what our children may be doing in school, but more of the focus on the why. Why a child who may have a traumatic or an adverse childhood experience may be behaving or reacting in a certain way. We're looking now at more of the why. And it's informed our placement process. It's informed our transition meetings from teacher to teacher. It has informed our weekly student support teams. We no longer look at a child for behavior needs. We look at them more proactively from a social emotional learning need, and continue to look at that in our discipline process. The third phrase that our school improvement plan hooked into was the dynamic and integrated curriculum. And in the end, how all of this, all 3 of these tie together to enable each learner to grow uniquely, to be their best self, and to reach their fullest potential as a student, and really focusing on the whole child. When we think about focus area 3, this is where I'm going to spend most of my time. The accomplishments that we've had in year 1 really look at more of the instructional advances we've made, and we're also going to be looking at how we use data to improve student learning. This is one of our kindergartners pictured here, Julia Rodriguez, who was a first place winner in a state poetry contest called Pop Goes the Seed that the Harwich Garden Club supported. So 1 year later, where are we with closing the gaps? We have leveraged the MAP partner resources. MAP is our partner with our assessments that you hear about quite often from the data reports that we do. Primarily Reading A to Z and Math IXL. We've brought those 2 resources into the classroom, and it's been a way for teachers to differentiate instruction and target student skills. The Words Their Way adoption in kindergarten through 4th grade, we started out with this as a pilot, and there was such an overwhelming response that we went straight to an adoption of that program. We have also invested over $30,000 in guided reading resources this school year. Guided reading is small group reading where children are taught on level, their instructional level by their teacher, and there's a comprehension skill target. And the reading resources are just shorter reads by level that are provided in a teacher resource library. So we have purchased the resources and now we're in the process of organizing them and making them ready to use for the teachers next year. We've continued with our Math in Focus professional development, particularly proud of our grade 4 team and how they've collaborated with Chatham Elementary around the needs of the 4th grade students. And our English language support and intervention. This spring, really, we've had 2 initiatives that have really taken off. We have an after-school English learner program that supports both reading and math that Mark Smith helped us get off the ground with some Title III funds. And it's very well attended, and it's been a wonderful way for us to connect with our English learner families after school when they pick up their children. And we've also revamped our intervention program so that our English learners are not only receiving support from their English language teacher and their classroom teacher, but also, if they qualify, can participate in our reading and math intervention. So what I'm going to spend our deep dive into is really looking at our K-2 intervention model and how we use data to identify those students and look at this as a case study and kind of the reality of how this the tires hit the road with our teachers at Harwich Elementary. Over the last 4 years, we have really reimagined our intervention model. Back in 2015, 2016, we had a very consistent representation of students needing reading and math intervention in terms of numbers from kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. And when I reflect back on that, it really felt like we were in triage mode because we needed to get our 3rd and 4th graders patched up and where they should be before they headed off to middle school, which really was putting a drain on our ability and capacity to address our kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade students. All the research says that the sooner you get in intervention, the earlier you get in, those gaps will shrink. If we don't get in early and address those needs early on in early literacy and early numeracy skills, that gap just continues to grow. And by 3rd and 4th grade, it can almost become it becomes very difficult just to make up the ground with the numbers in the school day. So as we continue to focus on K-2, this year we even ratcheted it back further. In the purple box there, we have some quote from some of the research that it's really not just the child's ability to read beginning in January when we should be stepping in kindergarten. It really scrolls back to the fall of kindergarten, and if you want to go even further back into preschool. So this year we took a risk and we started our intervention services right away in the fall of kindergarten. And we've been working on the phonological skills and phonemic awareness so that the children have those skills in place so that they can begin reading even earlier. This, I wanted to show you a sample of one of the data sheets from our math interventionist as an example. The first thing we do is we download all of the results from our math testing. This happens to be 2nd grade math. And that black solid line there is where we develop our individual school cut points based upon our averages and our standard error. And that typically falls around somewhere between the 25th and 30th percentile. So we have that black line. So we're looking at students above that black line as our potential intervention students. And the colors that you see, the yellow, green, and red, those 2 columns, DIBELS and the BVSD oral screener, those are 2 of what we call trigger assessments. Once we know kind of what that population is and we've cast that broad net, we're going to look even deeper with these assessments to see who the students are who truly do need that support, because sometimes you do have students who the map was kind of a false positive for. So DIBELS looks at early numeracy and computation. The Boulder Valley looks at their ability to do things orally and manipulate numbers. So when we see the red, those are the students that we're particularly concerned about. Yellow are the students that we will pull into intervention. And then the green, the students in green are the students who are hitting the benchmark. So a good example right here is this student who is above our cut point here in MAP, actually one of the lowest students in the grade level, but this child has hit the benchmark in Dibbles and in the Boulder Valley Screener. But if we look over here to their testing duration, it's just 22 minutes. So that's a great example of when MAP would not, if used as an individual data point to choose to select students for intervention, that it would not be accurate. So that's one of the reasons why we do the trigger assessments in both reading and math. Okay. This is just a look at the Dibbles where we have concepts and applications and computational levels for students. The black dots are the child's performance throughout the school year. The dotted line is what we call the aim line, and the big blue dot is where they should be at the end of the year. So that's how we continue to progress monitor the children through intervention and afterwards. Oops, sorry, Once we identify our population of students for intervention, our teachers do go back and consult with the teachers to get anecdotal information that would be good input for the process. And then we begin building the schedules, which is like a great big jigsaw puzzle, Rubik's Cube, working around the best design of frequency and duration for the intervention groups, as well as just working around recess, lunch, and specials. And we don't want to take a child out of core instruction in reading or math, and working around those staggered schedules. We also do notify the families every cycle whether their child's continuing in intervention, if it's recommended that they enter intervention and they had not been in intervention before, or if they're exiting intervention, which is something that we always celebrate. So the families receive this letter and are always very supportive of being able to have their children receive this extra support. I always say that then we rinse and repeat. We do this 3 cycles per year. We had been doing it 2 cycles per year, but we've now gotten so efficient and timely with our assessments. MAP has been a big part of that we can look at this more broadly three times a year. And we end the school year with our schedule all set up, ready for what we call the fall bridge cycle. So our interventionists are working with kids, and not the first couple of days of school, because those are days when the children really do need to be with their teachers, just getting settled. But they're familiar with the intervention teachers, and we get them started right away so we don't have any lost time. So how do we know if this is working? If we look at the assessment data, it really does tell us a story. So we use data to not only help us identify students, but we also use data to help us see if what we're doing is effective. The way that we know that our early kindergarten intervention model is working is that 50% of the kindergartners were exited after cycle 1, which allowed us to dig deeper and scoop up more students. And in cycle 2, 83% of our students had their 24 to 31 letter sounds. There are 26 letters in the alphabet, but those are the letter sounds, the hard C, soft C. That's how it adds up to more than 26. 100% of our children knew their uppercase letters, 93% knew their lowercase, which is very exciting, because this year when our first graders started, there were reports from the first grade teachers that we had first graders who still did not know their letters and letter sounds. But by the end of cycle 2, we had that in place for our students. So this is a shift of how our numbers have changed. So if you just really look at the numbers in 3rd and 4th grade, and how we've been able to load our intervention model more up into the K-1 grade levels. We know that 93% of our students who are in reading intervention or math intervention are meeting their projected growth goals on MAP. That means that we're meeting their needs and that they're growing at a rate that is what would be expected or beyond. It's another indicator that what we're doing is working. And our model that we have from our school council that's supporting the whole child and it is working. We set the goal of having 75% of our students hitting their target growth goal for every single one of our focus areas, with the belief that if all of these elements are in place and integrated, that we will close the gap, children will continue to grow, and with the growth comes achievement. This is probably my favorite graph on MAP, the quadrant graph, and this is a look at our entire school. This is math for all of Harwich Elementary. Every single one of those green X's represents a student, and we have 72% of our students have met their individual growth goals over from last winter to this winter on MAP. This is the quadrant where we want all of our kids to be, the high achievement, high growth. This is probably the quadrant that fills me with the most inspiration as children who are low achieving and hitting high growth. These are the kids that we worry about who are low achieving and low growth, and these are our high achievers who aren't hitting their growth goals. So we're paying attention to how we're differentiating instruction to meet all of their needs. So that's math, 72%, our goal was 75, so we're almost there. And in reading, 73% of our students have met their individual growth goals. So when we think about our integrated model and supporting the whole child, we have indicators that what we're doing is working, and that the intervention supports that we have in place at the K-2 model and focusing our resources there is really starting to get traction. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mary.
Yep.
Mrs. Scott?
If I remember correctly, when we first talked about MAP, the little pluses
Yep.
on the quadrants,
Yep.
when you're looking on your computer, they have names,
Yep.
right? So you can say, all right, these are the students.
Yep. So if I turned it on, this is, I can't do it here because it's
Right,
not
of course.
interactive, but if I were to click on that cross, it would tell me all the student's name, and I'd be able to look at their historic, their actual scores and some more historic data on that student. We can also very easily just toggle on and off boy, girl, math from reading, and some ethnicity indicators as well.
Okay, Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments? All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much for
you.
your presentation.
Thank you.
Wonderful as always. And next up, Mr. Wilson, Monomoy Regional Middle
Recognitions
School.
while we switch this over? Or do you want, it'll take a,
Yeah, we can.
It'll
if you
take a
want.
moment for me to
We'll take a
switch
moment. Scott, do you want to do your recognitions while we wait?
Sure. So I was just at the convocation getting it started, and just some round numbers that I was sharing with people. There were 66 of our 112 soon-to-be graduates were receiving scholarships tonight. Monomoy Dollars for Scholars was awarding $106,000 in scholarships. The Cape Cod Foundation, another $94,000 in scholarships. An assortment of other community organizations providing an additional $115,000 in scholarships. So all totaled, the scholarships that are being awarded as we're meeting right now will be $315,775,000 in scholarships, which actually works out, as I shared to the group, $4,784 on average per recipient at tonight's event. And
It's amazing.
so I have in your packet the different organizations. This isn't the full list of all that provide scholarships. This is the list of the individuals who are actually there tonight that will be, sort of shaking hands and, handing out an envelope to the graduates, and then, or to our soon-to-be graduates. And then I would, lastly, just a thank you that's in your packet to Goose Hummock of Orleans and Captain Phil Holworth, who generously donated 6 rods and reels from their store to the Anglers Club, and would like to thank the Friends of Chatham Waterways for their generous donation of a grant of $1,800 to support the middle school writers retreat. I don't know what happened when I wasn't here.
Under recognitions?
You could recognize.
You can do that.
I can do that?
Uh-huh.
We'd like to publicly recognize Mrs. Meredith Henderson joining the Monomoy Regional School Committee this year from Harwich, and we're excited to have her here. And this will be your opportunity if you'd like to say anything, Ms. Henderson, or you don't have to.
Thank you. I'm excited for this new
start.
chapter.
I just realized that my microphone was off that entire time. Okay, all right, great. And then now we're gonna go back to Mr. Wilson for the Monomoy Regional Middle School data presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Wilson, principal of Monomoy Regional Middle School. It's a pleasure for me to share with you the data for our building for the last year. Some of the data will be student level, some of the data is grade level, some of it is school-wide, and some of it will certainly be of interest to your school committee members because it's almost district level data. For our school improvement plan, one of our focus areas were our professional practices, and those are practices and structures that support and improve student learning. Mary spoke a bit about MAP. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper to show you what that MAP data looks like in the middle school and how we use it instructionally to help improve the outcomes for all of our students. Here's a comparison. Here's our fall 2018 to winter 2019. We're in the process of doing our spring MAP testing actually today and during the course of this week. So we'll have the June data, or late May, early June shortly, but this is the data as of mid-January. Mary shared with you our Foursquare, our favorites already, so I won't go back through that, but the quadrant we want everybody in is high achievement, high growth. Low achievement, high growth is awesome, because that means if these students continue with their high growth, they will move up and to the right and end up here. High achievement, low growth isn't my third favorite. These students are still doing well in terms of their overall achievement, but we'd like to be able to make sure we're challenging them well enough that they also are in the high growth area. And the students in the lower left are the ones that are at-risk students. If they remain in the low achievement, low growth section, it means they are falling further behind their peers, and we need to do some intervention to help catch them up. And what I'll share with you tonight is a little bit of the intervention we do when we get to that piece. Just so you have a benchmark here, we get our scores as median growth percentiles, and that lets us know whether our students are making typical growth, above average growth, high average growth, or significantly above or below. So 50 is typical growth. So as I go through this data, when you see a number of 50, it means that the students are making a typical amount of growth from the fall to the winter. We'd like all of our students to make above typical growth. So any number above 50 is good news. Any number below 50 is not great news. If we can get to 61 to 79 for our growth scores, it means we are above average, and our students are outperforming their peers across the country. If we get into the 80 to 100, we're significantly above average with how our students are making progress between the fall and the winter. I like those numbers because you're going to see some good numbers coming up. Here's our grade 5 reading. Our percentage of students who met or exceeded their projected score was 78.1. Remember, Mary, she was looking for 75, and they came in around 73. So we're doing nicely there. And our median growth percentile is 76. So we're very comfortably in the above average, and almost to the significantly above average if we got to 7 to 80 for that figure. And like that same graph, you see our students are grouped up here, and we have some students that we're concerned about. We want to make sure we don't lose track of these individuals and provide them with the right supports so that they can also move ideally from this spot to this spot. That's their next usual location, low achievement to low growth to low achievement high growth, and then over to here. Our grade 5 mathematics, also some solid numbers. 63% of our students made their fall to winter growth scores. We'd like to see that a bit higher. But our median growth percentile is 60, which is right in that bubble for above average growth. So again, it's pretty solid there. Grade 6 reading, probably the area that we have the most room to be able to have some growth. 58.3% of our students made it. We had a 55 growth percentile. So that's kind of typical growth. Again, we're shooting for above average growth everywhere. The other side of that coin is grade 6 math. 75% of our students met their scores. And we have a median growth percentile of 80. So we're significantly above average when you compare how much growth is happening in mathematics with our students at Monomoy Middle School compared with the rest of the nation. Grade 7 reading, 65%, and a median growth percentile of 64, again solidly in that above average growth. And grade 7 mathematics, 60%, and a 63 median growth. So just about everywhere we are above average or significantly above average, with that one exception of grade 6 reading at the moment. And I did put some information together that gives you a graph over time. So what I'm watching here is our median growth conditional growth percentiles. Here's where we were last winter when I presented some data to this committee and to my staff. And we had median growth percentiles of 56, 56, 67, 31, 48, and 62. So in 3 out of the 6 tested areas, we were making above average growth. But in 3 out of the 6 areas, we were making typical growth to slightly below average growth. This year, at the same time, we've got 5 out of the 6 areas where we are above average growth, and just the 1 area we are typical growth. So as I look at our school over time, this graph helps me chart how the impact of our initiatives is actually carrying out on our students as we move over time. So it's a nice piece. Yes?
That's not following a cohort of kids, though.
Not following a cohort of kids.
Last year's 5th graders and this year's 5th graders.
Be last year's 5th graders. You could look at this year's 6th graders if you'd
Right.
like to follow the cohort.
Okay.
So if you take that as a cohort, last year our 5th graders had a 56 and they're at 55. So it's kind of
Okay.
typical with their reading, but they went from 56 to 80, which is a huge jump
Right.
with regard to math.
Okay.
So you can kind of follow those students through time.
Thank you.
Okay. But the short version is, as long as all these numbers are 60 or higher, I will
Right.
always be a happy man. And here is a challenge for us. Although we've had some strong growth for our students in pretty much every area, there's only 2 points at the moment where we are above the national norm for their winter scores, and that's in our grade 6 reading, ironically, and grade 7 reading. Here are the national norms, and that's where I've starred those things. And then we're right at basically national norm for our grade 5 reading. We're slightly below on our grade 5 math. We're below on our grade 6 math, and we're slightly below on our grade 7 math. So across the boards, we have some room to grow for mathematics. Any questions on math before I move along? Actually, I'm going to dive back into math anyway, so. Brain frames. We have a very nice school-wide initiative around brain frames. We noticed through our assessment data, particularly around MCAS analysis, that our students were having a hard time collecting the information from their reading so that they could organize it in a way to write effectively in response to the MCAS prompts or other essays that we were asking them to do. So it was very consistent that they had a struggle with taking information out of text, organizing it in a clear way, and then being able to share it back. So we came up with a brain frames intervention. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Here's the data that gives you insight into our students' struggles. In 2017, for our grade 5 students on their MCAS ELA, out of the total possible points they could earn on their open response questions, our students earned 48.7% of the possible points. And in 2018, they earned 46.8. They took the test about a month ago. We don't know what those scores will look like. This is not far off the state average. The test is very challenging. So the numbers are in red because we were slightly below the state average in both years. So not only is the state struggling on ELA open response because the average response is under 50% of the points, we're slightly struggling more than the state was. In grade 6, Again, same data, 2017, our grade 6 students at the time earned 38.5% of the possible points. Last year, we did much better. We earned 43.3, and that was ahead of the state. So if you think about what that means. So the statewide average for grade 6 students, ELA, was about 40% of the possible points. So statewide, if you think of it on a strict, kind of traditional scale, the state is failing, that 40% of the points are being earned. So our goal is always to get ahead of the state and ideally to get as close to 100 as we can. And again, 2019, we're not sure we're going. And the same trend was a bit in grade 7. In 2017, we were ahead of the state at 54.2. Last year, we were at 47.9. So these open response questions in the middle school are exceptionally challenging. It is one of the toughest skills that our students are asked to display.
When you say that the state is below average or something, what is that in comparison to other states? 'Cause Massachusetts is usually number 1.
No, I'd say that Massachusetts, you could easily make the case that Massachusetts has one of the hardest, if not the hardest, statewide assessment systems in the country. So even those students at grades 5, 6, and 7, when they write their essays, are generally earning only half of the possible points. Massachusetts still scores as among the top countries in the world. We actually paid to have Massachusetts scored against the rest of the world as its own country, and we came out tied for first with Minnesota, South Korea, and I don't remember the last country.
Okay, well, it's interesting about that. So what you're saying is, I believe, is that we're scoring according to an expectation that's set, not towards comparing to other kids.
Correct. The
Okay.
expectation for all students in Massachusetts is quite high.
Yes.
And if we can manage to get 100% of the points, I'm sure we'll be first in the world. So we took the brain frames, started with a small group last year where we were looking at English language arts. We used these strategies, there are 6 of them, to help students gather their evidence and then put it in one of 6 categories, showing relationships between facts, sequencing facts as kind of in a chronology, just a telling frame, which is a bit of their favorite, tell us everything you know about the topic and just fill it all right in, comparing and contrasting, showing cause and effects, or categorizing. So we're training the students now that if you keep using these different strategies, both in English and math and art and music and all the places that we have them write, if you recognize what the prompt is asking you, is it asking you for a cause and effect, then this would be a good way to organize your evidence. If it's asking you to compare and contrast, if you use this approach, this will help you. If it asks you to tell everything you know, this is a good approach. And you're not set with anyone, because you could actually use any of these approaches to answer an essay. But all of our students between last year and this year, on their ELA last year, you can use scrap paper to kind of work out your essays. Last year, we had very few students doing any pre-writing or pre-organizing of their MCAS essays before they went right into typing it on the computer. This year, we've got massive numbers of brain frames that students worked on before they actually wrote their essays. So we'll see I'm excited to see the data when it comes out. You'll see it right away, because whatever it is, we're hoping it's very good, but that's our whole school strategy. Our next focus area in our school improvement plan was student learning. We wanted to maximize the impact of learning for each student through our instructional practices. And the dive-in is trying to give you some Lexile scores and how we use those for differentiation. Jumping back to MAP for a moment, I know this is very difficult for everyone to see because it's so small, but we have a summary of a student's results with some areas for both mathematics and reading. So I'm going to look at reading here. And the only thing I want you to pay focus to is this Lexile range right down here in the map, and even I can't read it from here. 165 to 314, Mr. Smith, what does that say?
195.
195 to 314. So when our students take a math test, they get a Lexile score, and a Lexile means this is the level of text that the student can read with 75% independence. So they're able to understand what they read, and there's enough challenge, that's the extra 25% on top, that they're going to learn new information, but be able to figure out that new information from the context of the rest of the reading. If you give a student with a low Lexile score a very difficult book, they will only be frustrated. If you give a student with a high Lexile score a low Lexile book, they can enjoy the book for the love of reading, but chances are they won't learn a whole lot of new vocabulary or complicated sentence structure. So our goal is to try to match Lexile reading with a student. Here's one report. Again, you've got the Lexile range of 195 to 345. And here are the books that would be appropriate for that student. Okay. So the information I'm sharing with you now was for a student that was rising into 5th grade. So a student that was rising into the 5th grade, and who we have had actually in our school for a couple of years now. When they were a rising 5th grader, this particular 5th grade student had this Lexile range, and here are the books that would be the most appropriate for them. Also among the rising 5th graders a couple of years ago was this student, who had a Lexile range of 1,113 to 1,263. They were rising side by side coming into the 5th grade. And here are the books that student would be appropriate to read. Separate Peace and Nicholas Nickleby by Charles Dickens.
Wow.
So as our students arrive, I like this because it gives you a very strong indication of how our students come to us with different backgrounds and strengths. And then we ask our staff to differentiate their instruction to meet the needs of these students when they're in the same class together. And that could be in social studies or art or music or science or wherever they may be. So it's a good challenge for us to be able to make sure we challenge each student appropriately. And if you go back to that foursquare, we want to make sure we're challenging all of our students appropriately so they have high growth. Growth is really the best measure of a school. So here's how one area that we do this. We have News ELA that we've brought into the school as a subscription. And News ELA is fascinating because you can take any article. In this case, this one has to be about the polar bears. And you can bring the article, pull up News ELA, and then by clicking on the Lexile score on the right-hand side, you can reorganize the text so the students are reading the same article, but the sentence structure becomes easier, and some of the more challenging vocabulary gets replaced by synonyms that will be more accessible. And so students don't actually realize that they're reading different articles, but you're just tailoring the article to the student's needs. It's a very neat tool for us to be able to differentiate that. And because we have Chromebooks now, it's even easier for us to do this because kids just get the article on the Chromebook and they don't even realize the student next to them has a different article because they have the same picture. So it just looks the same to them. They just read the article and respond to the same questions with a differentiated text. We also try to tailor our summer reading so that we can meet the needs of all of our students. So we pick our titles very strategically so it reflects a range of interests in the topics. And then we also provide the Lexile levels for our parents so when they're going out, they can match the student's Lexile level with the books that we're recommending for the summer reading. So even in the summertime, we're being strategic. Okay. Any questions kind of on the differentiation? Right. Okay. So last one is the learning culture. We take collective responsibility for the social and emotional well-being of every student. That's in our school improvement plan. One of the things we do every year is to survey students to find the positive relationships that exist between our students and staff. We want to make sure every student feels connected with at least 2 adults in our building. And we identify any unconnected students and create mentors or silent mentors for them so that they have adults that they know are someone they can go to if they ever have a concern. Here's our visual map of relationships. On the left-hand side, it's covered up our student names. The green and blue dots are where staff felt that they had a very strong relationship with that student. That would be a green dot. Or they had enough familiarity with that student that the student would come to them if they had a problem that they wanted to talk about. And on the right-hand side are the students' responses for how many students actually really for that particular individual. So they would say, yep, nope. So let me put it this way. Take the one on top. Our staff said, we feel there are 4 teachers in our building who are well connected to this student. And the student said, I'm connected to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 staff members.
Wow.
Okay. So that's kind of how we do that. We cross-reference that data. We do that through an annual survey. We've done it 2 years now. We just ask the students one question. Which staff members treat you with warmth, understanding, respect, and interest so that you are comfortable sharing your personal problems or concerns with them? And that's the back data that you just saw. So when they answer that, here's what we got. Last year, in 2017-18, students that reported they had one or more relationship that fits that definition was 94.3%. That's out of 400 and, we had 26 students who said they had had no relationship, basically. And the other 433 said they have one or more. And then in 2018-19, we've got a bigger school population. 458 students have at least one relationship that meets the definition. And there were 21 that did not, so we're at 95.5. For comparison, the state average is 73%. So it's a very supportive school culture in terms of relationships. It's the only memo my staff look forward to. Each year after we do the survey, I actually hand tabulate the data and be able to give the staff the listing of kids who verified through a survey, you treat me with warmth, interest, respect, and understanding, and I would come to you with a problem if I had one. And they get the listing of dozens or hundreds of students who say, basically, I really like you a lot. That's the memo that they get. So they get an alphabetical listing. It's also important to remember that the length of the list doesn't matter to me at all. We have some students, staff who work with just one student or a small group of students. They provide intervention services, so they may only come into contact with 10 or 12 students over the course of their daily work. And we have others, PE teachers, guidance counselors, administrators, who come in contact with 461 students on a day. So the length of the list doesn't matter to me. What matters is that each student is connected to at least 2 adults in our building. Here's the 2018, so this is just from a month ago. On this side would be the list of 5th grade students who reported that they had this type of relationship. There were 3 that said, I don't feel connected with any staff members in that way at this time. There were another 6 that said, I have 1 connection. And there were another, whatever that comes out, 12 or so that said, I have 2 connections. And here's the people that they actually said, I feel connected to. So for each student that has 2 or fewer, we actually ask staff, would you like to be an informal mentor or mentor for these students? An informal mentor is someone that has a very informal relationship. They'll make sure they make eye contact, say hi on a regular basis, compliment you on your new shoes, just find a way to let you know that we're interested in who you are as a human being. And then hopefully that develops that good, solid relationship over time. And a mentor is a more formal relationship, like a coach. It could be a club advisor, someone you spend more time with, that they're going to have a much deeper relationship because of the nature of the interaction between the student and the staff member. So we do that every year. And as part of our trauma group, we actually have a bunch of staff members finishing up their trauma training. We're actually tracking the impact of this over time. So we went back and looked at the students last year who said they didn't feel connected. And then we looked back at the informal mentors that we put together. And we said, how did that look this year when we surveyed the students? Did their mentors or informal mentors show up as people they now feel connected to? So we're doing that data as well. And I also want to point out that even though I've probably coded this in a way that's alarming, red, amber, and green, it's also good to recognize that not every student needs to feel this relationship at school. We'd like it, but lots of students feel very comfortable with this relationship with their parents or clergy or a coach that doesn't work in our building and other places. It's not just a school where we have these relationships. But we always just say, we're going to make sure we have good relationships no matter what. Okay? Here's a grade 6. So we go through the same process all the time. I always like it when I show up as the only person they like. And then grade 7. Again, one thing that's just interesting just visually, we would anticipate that the list would get shorter through time in one way, because 5th graders obviously only know a certain segment of the population, and then they haven't been in the building that long. And by the time they get to grade 7, they've come into contact with more people. So that's one thing that would argue that the list would get shorter over time. The thing that would argue against that and the list getting longer over time is middle school, and as they get to grade 7, they really don't like to hang out with adults at all.
The middle school kids.
So you have that tension between making good connections and being an independent young adult who says, I don't need you anymore, I'm good to go. And then our last piece, our learning culture. We want to make sure we have appropriate, experiences to support student learning and well-being. And we're really proud of a lot of the environmental and local history units we put together, like the Finest Hours and Beyond the Bright Sea, and our Truro experience for our grade 5 students. We do our annual all-school field trip. This year we went to see Phantom of the Opera at the Providence Performing Arts Center. It was a fantastic adventure. We've got the Science Writers Retreat coming up this weekend. Students spend a whole weekend working out in nature and working on their writing craft with our staff volunteers. We upscaled. We had 1 evening of inspiration last year. This year we had 3 evenings of inspiration. That's 2 weeks before the end of each quarter. We invite students who are struggling and anyone else who wants to come to an extra school day on a Friday afternoon and evening. They stay from 3:30 till approximately 7 o'clock, working on homeworks or projects with staff that are volunteering their time to tutor. We also have some high school students who come down and help out. And then they have an ice cream dinner and some leadership training. And a nice, not ice cream dinner, excuse me, pasta dinner with ice cream.
I was going with it.
It's awesome.
That's why they all want me.
So it's a really fun night. Kids kind of can change their perception of the school, but they see 100 kids working hard. We're all cheering when they finish up assignments, and they can't wait to ring the bell to get the next thing done. And just last week, we had 125 students in leadership training. Again, that's another full evening. So we've got a lot of things going on. And last, some data I think will make you smile. We want our experiences for our schools to inspire hearts and child and families to keep their students in district for their education. Here's the impact of our efforts over time. Here are our charter school pre-enrollments based as a percentage of our population of grade 5 students opting to go to charter as they enter grade 6. And you can see there's a nice decline over time. And these are the projections that we have coming up for this year. So we've cut in half in 4 years the students who are looking or seeing the charter school as something that would be offering something that we cannot offer. So I'm pretty happy about that. And then I think probably the one I'm most proud about with the staff, we are the top performing middle school in the Cape and the Islands from last year's MCAS. We are the only middle school that actually met expectations. And so you'll see that here with the ratings for all of the different schools that are of similar configuration, how many students they have, what their classification was, what their progress was. So, Barnesville Intermediate was 22%, partially meeting its improvement targets. We were at 83%, and so we were the only school that actually met its targets. What our accountability percentile was, and what our MAP, our student growth percentile at MAP was number 1 out of all these 11 schools, and we were second in our growth in ELA at 57.6. So those are the variables that basically the state looked at and said there are no other schools on the Cape and the Islands who are performing in terms of growth and outcomes as high as Monomoy Regional Middle School. I'm happy to take questions.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions? Mr. Russell?
Not a question, Mark. Congratulations from me to you through the staff.
To the staff,
Tremendous
yes,
report card.
absolutely.
And I, again, for the second time in about 2 months, I'm just amazed at the progress that data and learning what this all means compared to back in the day. I look at this and think of all the staff that have been trained in this and how individually they can address the needs of these kids, not only academically, but the social emotional piece. Great connect, too, from Mary's youngsters thinking of those reading difficulty scores. So in theory, her staff in grade 4 can pass on to your guidance counselors the 3 to 4 to 7 kids who are just flying off the reading charts on day 1 of the September they arrived. Back in the day, I can remember we got scores from what then was MCAS back in late October.
Right.
So you had 40 or 45 days of treading water, or you're on your own. So great stuff. Thanks.
Definitely helps us know what we can do for a student as they walk in the door.
Yeah.
And we use that for our seminar, block where we schedule students based on their intervention needs or their enrichment strengths, day one. So it's very different than it used to be.
Ms. Stout?
And Mark, I believe you were the administrator that brought this program to us, is that correct?
Which
The
one, or do I
map.
get to take credit for all of them?
Map.
That was a good collaborative conversation, but
Okay.
I was familiar with MAP from
Okay.
some previous
Well,
work.
I've known about of course, middle school being the only number one on the Cape, but looking at this right here is, I guess I would say shocking, because it's so significantly different, except for Falmouth, on the scores there, that it's just, I mean, I loved the whole thing, going through what Mary went through and all the things that you went through of what all we're doing to help the kids right along, not fall through the cracks. But to see this, it just is striking. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And of course, the
Also,
staff.
I'll also point out how hard it is to be a successful middle school.
Yes.
Look,
Yes.
And just because I have to be honest with the data, we also have some improvement here too. We're not the highest in terms of achievement on ELA and math. So you'll see we're sitting just above, 500 is meeting expectations.
Yes.
So we have other schools that are performing a bit higher than we are in terms of their average score, but no one is outperforming us in terms of growth.
Yes.
If we can keep our growth up, then these numbers will also
Yes.
rise. Okay. Because I'm not gonna let the audience get away easily. 10% of this number was because of attendance. We scored 0% out of 10 for how often our parents and guardians and caregivers get their children to our school. So we were successful getting 0 out of 10 points. So our students had all been to school on a regular basis and not taken vacations during the school year, then we would actually be at 93%.
And perhaps because they're enjoying school so much, they want to go.
All these things are good. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, I'm sorry, there's one more.
Just
Tina James.
one more comment. This is fabulous, and I just want to say I've worked a lot with at-risk youth, and I love the whole idea behind just making sure somebody has at least one person. That's so huge. And I was looking at the grade 6 cafeteria Vicky, cafeteria Jill. I mean, I love that everybody's included in this.
Everybody's, yes.
Yeah,
We've got
I love
80
this.
80 potential staff members that connected. One other thing I should share, I don't have the coaches on here. For
Oh.
the simple reason that not all of our coaches worked from inside the building. So a lot of our students have very close connections with the coach, but the coach may come from, they work in the community. So that individual is not immediately available to the student if they happen to need a concern. So if we actually expanded and added coaches, then this number would actually drop quite a bit. Just because you're like, I love my coach, so I don't need anybody else. But that's just strategic because I can't be sure that they're there if they need something,
Yeah.
okay?
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank
Both
you.
presentations were excellent. Moving forward, the superintendent's evaluation. What we do each year is evaluate the superintendent. The packets were handed out 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and completed. And then the subcommittee, or myself, put together a summative of the evaluations. At this time, we will hear from each of the school committee members, with a possibly prepared comment about the evaluation and Dr. Carpenter. And then at the end, I will read out the summative, which is all of our comments together and the overall report. I will start with Mr. Osceola.
I was so hoping you wouldn't do that. My prepared comment was turned in, and I didn't keep a copy of my
I have a
prepared
copy if
comment.
you would like one.
I could fashion some of it from memory, since I actually wrote it, but if you like, if you want these
Were
read,
you
I actually wrote my own comments, yes.
You didn't type it?
No, I didn't type it or anything. I wrote it by cursive and pen, And if it's available,
It's
I'll be
available,
happy
yeah.
to read it. I could summarize a few points, but
Excuse me for one moment while I pull it out. It's the one I went by. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but you're handling it well.
well, having just gone through an evaluation of my own, I appreciate this. By that, I mean an election. Okay, so what you're asking me to do is to read this lengthy comment here. Okay, I'd be happy to do it. Okay, step 5, add evaluator comments, and I wrote the following. Throughout the evaluation process, Dr. Carpenter's self-judgments and personal reflections demonstrate a well-balanced and impressive degree of candor and insight. He is neither liberal with self-praise nor conservative with self-criticism. He strives for accuracy. In that spirit, in an effort to be on point, I will suggest one area for change based on Standard 3-D. In public meetings, Dr. Carpenter provides thorough information, rich in detail. Paradoxically, the very fullness of these comments suggests to an increasingly skeptical public an effort of obfuscation. The townspeople who hold that belief are in error. Nonetheless, the superintendent could become more effective in communicating the truth of the district, especially its budget, by honing his delivery more in the manner of a politician and less like a mathematician, less like a scholar. Paradox, indeed. I would add that in my career, few administrators possess the personal virtues, the character, and the integrity of Dr. Carpenter. The Monomoy Regional School District is fortunate to have this superintendent. I'll pass it back.
Yeah, I'll go.
I'll continue.
Thank you, Mr. Osceola. Ms. Games?
Yes. All right, reading my comments. Generally, I'm satisfied with the direction that the superintendent is taking our school district. He continues to be focused on 21st century learning while honoring state and federal mandates, and is always considering how our students need to be prepared for the world that they will be stepping into when they graduate. He has been committed to the strategic plan and has made significant progress toward meeting some of these goals. The superintendent is also extremely knowledgeable when it comes to laws, policies, and collective bargaining agreements, which were evident in a critical year where several contracts are being negotiated. Additionally, I continue to be impressed with the quality of our key administrators, principals, directors, which show the superintendent's strengths in recruitment, hiring, and training. I also appreciate the collaborative efforts with community partners as it relates to early childhood options, which include childcare. This is a clear need of many of our young families in our two towns, as evidenced in a recent survey designed by the superintendent and administered by the community engagement coordinator, showing the superintendent's intuitive and visionary abilities. Where I see a strong need for improvement is in the superintendent's interactions with those outside of our school community. I would like to see more community engagement with those who may not see the full value of our regionalized school system, particularly those without children or grandchildren in our Monomoy schools or without an understanding of what makes an adequate school budget. Inviting these individuals into conversations, focus groups, and collaborative brainstorming sessions would showcase the superintendent's goal for stronger community engagement. I would also like to see better preparation and a stronger presentation in our town meetings with questions answered as efficiently as possible.
Thank you. Ms. Henderson, this is your crash course. I'm going to skip over you and move on to Mr. Russell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have in my summary given Scott a highly proficient rating in summary. I'll read my 2 points that I raise in those areas. The 2018 and 19 school year presented two major challenges. Contract negotiations with 4 bargaining units. Scott led the school committee negotiating team to a fair and reasonable agreement for all parties. This effort took the better part of over a school year. The second item, he created and successfully presented a sound fiscal year 2020 operating budget to both towns, despite the serious issues confronting the Monomoy district. Scott's financial management and his writing skills, as well as his patient and organized planning in regard to the above issues, led to a successful budget for the school and the taxpayers alike. In summary, the Monomoy School District is fortunate and well-served to have a system leader with Dr. Carpenter's educational knowledge, insight, and work ethic. The last 2 words, I just want to extemporaneous comment on them. I've spent the latter 5 or 6 years on the committee as part of the search to bring the superintendent here. In all the hours I've spent with Scott, I find that his work ethic is exemplary. The devotion he's given to this school district, one wants to slow him down. The hours he puts in, the commitment in the product that is a result of that in his writing statements, whether it's budget or brainstorm ideas, I have been thoroughly impressed. I give that as a high score and also a fortunate gift as a school district to have. A couple of other points. It's been alluded to. Under the category of, my own category, of community, it's the easy words, communication. In a subcommittee of evaluation, I've mentioned this to Scott. I think that the idea of expanding the ability to cause the non-parents, and it's already been alluded to, the taxpayers in both towns, the citizens. The suggestion I would make as a goal for growth that we take a page out of last year's challenging budget in which there was an attempt on Scott's part. I think we held it at the community center in Howard. I saw that as a very positive evening, and I would suggest that Scott plan to have somewhere in the form of 3 of those open agenda community citizen parent meeting where we come together, not just Scott, but the school committee, and that evening field issues and questions in an attempt to respond so that we don't become hijacked at a town meeting with 500 people sitting, throwing questions out off the top of one's head. I think that attempt might cause some clarity, but also some personal contact with the taxpayers in this town, people who don't have children. I would follow that up in some way to try to market the school district, and I see some progress in that, especially with Ms. Jordan as a employee creating things in which I think is a benefit. So that we would create I alluded to this a couple of weeks ago, a twice-a-year brochure that would identify the heroes and the home runs that the district has experienced over the past year. And not just mail it to the parents via all the schools, but find out if we have the money to mail it to every citizen in the town of Howard, in the town of Chatham. Hopefully, if we take a notch out of that as an idea, we may find more informed folks that have no real ownership in coming to the schools because they don't have any children here, which is valid. So those are the 2 areas I see where could continue to pave the way, if not with more of an informed public, but for ourselves, making ourselves more public. The 2 areas I think that I've commented earlier regarding Scott's strategic planning. I thought his leadership there was excellent. It continues to be that in the way he leads what I see to be a collaborative effort with his principals and department heads. I find that as a strength of the district.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Mrs. Scott?
First of all, this is painful because you have to do this publicly, and I can't imagine having my evaluation of my job public in front of all of my clients.
Trust me, it's not the most painful part of my day.
But on a other note, I mean, my overall rating, as it has been for all of our evaluations for you, has been proficient. And I think on my highlighting is the impact on student learning is high, because, and I'll explain why. Dr. Carpenter continues to push Monomoy forward by keeping his focus on the students and how best to educate the whole child, not just with academics. He constantly looks at where we are now and where we can improve, keeping in mind a fiscal responsibility with our two towns. It was a challenging year considering the negotiations process with our teachers, followed up by the other units, a lack of any bidders on for our expiring bus contract, which I don't want to bring up again, and what seems to be a constantly changing budget challenge. Dr. Carpenter continually seeks a balance between what we should have in place for our students while respecting our teachers and employees and being a good fiscal partner with Chatham and Harwich. With the FY20 budget he presented to the school committee, he accomplished this balance. The finance subcommittee and the school committee found little to change before supporting it. The town's citizens appreciated it, and as it passed unanimously, or very close to it, in both towns at this year's town meetings. The fall's strategic planning process was well organized and well attended. A large, diverse group from our two communities participated in the focus group as well as the steering committee. The resulting strategic plan for 2018 through 2022 and beyond is a comprehensive guide to direct Monomoy into the future in several different aspects for all 4 of our schools. The time Dr. Carpenter spends with the administrative team and the walks through their buildings is priceless. The dedication on his part to ensure he is in each of the 4 buildings on a regular basis is remarkable, and the time he is taking with each administrator and their evaluation process is an extremely important task that will continue to drive us to become better. And finally, Dr. Carpenter continues to be dedicated and involved with other CAPE superintendents as well as the state legislature. He is a consummate supporter of collaborating with a healthy dose of competition with our neighboring schools. And he is willing to share with our state leaders where financial formulas are not working for Monomoy and others. For next year, I hope Dr. Carpenter continues and expands upon his work from this year with the learning walks, the MAP data, and early childhood. In conclusion, after working with Dr. Carpenter for the past 6 years on the school committee, I continue to be impressed with his dedication to the improvement for all of Monomoy, as well as his financial transparency and responsibility. And I look forward to seeing Monomoy's future with you as our superintendent.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. And next up, Ms. Sheehan. Thank you.
So I prefaced this with, I sat down and started categorizing, which is frightening for everybody, including me. And then I thought,
You were using a brain frame.
I was gonna say.
honest to God, I know these things. I used to create those and stick them up on the wall. So then I thought, well, you know what, you're just gonna have to cut it back because nobody wants to listen to me for that length of time. So I picked my 3 favorite things, and the theme is gonna be students. That's where I come from, and I just love a good strategic plan, which is kind of pathetic too. But I like them, it's order. Whether an organizational chart of the Monomoy School District is viewed from the top down or the bottom up, the responsibility of the superintendent, the administrators, the teachers, and the school committee is to attend to student achievement. To that end, SMART goals have been set by Dr. Carpenter, guiding professional practice, student learning, district improvement. The Strategic Planning Steering Committee, under the leadership of Dr. Carpenter, presented a draft of the strategic plan to the public, and with input from all interested stakeholders, the school committee adopted it, and it's on the website, on December 13th, 2019, and I will tell you at my exercise class, a woman thanked me for it. Dr. Carpenter and the administrative team have focused 1 meeting a month on the implementation of this plan. The goal is to align each school's improvement plan with strategic plan, which will allow administrators and teachers to assess the progress of student learning with a common tool. Dr. Carpenter is exploring a possible partnership with YMCA to support early childhood opportunities for the families of Harwich and Chatham. He developed a family community needs survey and sent it to the community through the Monomoy Family Resource Coordinator. To date, over 250 families have responded. As Dr. Carpenter had anticipated, there is an overwhelming need for childcare in both communities. Again, it's always about our children at Monomoy Regional District, School District. Finally, the initiation of the instructional rounds by Dr. Carpenter, accompanied by Mr. Smith, Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment, and the new administrators, creates a space of collaboration among teachers and administrators. Best practices in evaluation set an environment where an instructor might take a chance with a new teaching strategy, improving student learning. All are the beneficiaries of viewing, discussing, and understanding high-quality instruction. And my only suggestion for growth, because I had to cut it off, is that I think it's important that we make our board meetings meaningful, inclusive, and really discuss district issues. Other than that, I couldn't keep up with the pace that you go, and I'm so impressed with all the initiatives that I've seen just in the year that I've been here. It's a year and a half that I've been here, so that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Sheehan. Ms. Stout?
So that's helped me cut down what I wanted to say. So just in summarizing, Dr. Carpenter has made significant progress on his goals in professional practice, student learning, and district goals. His efforts in serving the child care needs of the district, as Ms. Sheehan just said, was very laudable. His efforts in instructional leadership on curriculum and instruction is proficient, and as we saw in the presentations tonight with Harwich Elementary School and Monomoy Middle School on their data-informed instruction, that's exemplary. Dr. Carpenter's management and operation performance of policies and law and management skills are also proficient. The only areas for needs improvement would be on the standards 3, family and community area of two-way communication, conversations with families and stakeholders, and on standard 4, the area of shared vision and communication, such as preparation for a town meeting. Overall, proficient.
Great, thank you. And I will read my summary. To be clear, this is just my summary, and then I will follow up with the school committee's summation. Dr. Carpenter has exemplified fiscal management, administrative support, as well as staff support during the 2018-2019 school year. Based on observation, presentations, and feedback, the district continues to strive for excellence and grow under his direction. This year posed many challenges, including contract negotiations and thorough budget explanations, details, and support. Dr. Carpenter's approach with local stakeholders is patient and concise. His outreach to parents in the community, although not as well attended as we'd like, is growing. Much like the support of our stakeholders who can see the tremendous growth and success of the district. I look forward to the 2019-2020 school year and seeing more work, much like this year, from our superintendent. And my overall rating was proficient, although I wish there was a highly proficient category in between proficient and exemplary. Now I will read the summation of all committee members. This is including our past chair, Donna Richardson's evaluation as well. The overall, summative evaluation in performance was noted as proficient. And the comments are as follows. Dr. Carpenter has earned an overall summative performance of proficient for the 2018-2019 school year. He continues to put all students of Monomoy first in his leadership style. There were several themes in the individual evaluations by the school committee. First, the successful planning, organization, and leadership of the approved strategic plan. Second, an appreciation towards Dr. Carpenter's exploration of child care needs for our current and future Monomoy families, showing his visionary nature to support our families where needed most. Third, the annual budget process with our two towns was thoughtful and successful, with thorough presentations throughout budget season. And finally, there is the desire for Dr. Carpenter and our district to continue to reach out to all in our community, striving to engage them as best we can. In conclusion, overall, we are pleased with Dr. Carpenter's performance and are fortunate to have him as our superintendent. And that concludes the evaluation, unless there are any other comments at this time. We will vote on this at our next meeting, and I will also hand out that summative so that all members have a copy of it for themselves. I'll just pass them down this way. Just pass those down. Okay. All right, and next up for discussion is the assignment of subcommittee roles to school committee members. Much like we've done in the past, we have, I believe you'll find in your folder a list of all of our subcommittees and who are currently on those. What I would ask between now and our next school committee meeting is if you could write in where you would like to work next year on which subcommittees. I will take those and put them together, hopefully getting everybody their first and or second choices, and then present those at our next meeting for review and any discussion. You can email me those requests, and I can also email you a blank document, this document which can be blank. We can email that out to you, and you can also fill that out and hand it in to Leah, and I'll go to the office to get it. Or you can email that to me, whatever works best for the members, or you can be a quick little note on which committees you're interested in serving on. And then, moving from there, are there any are there any questions or comments on the subcommittee? Ms. Scott?
I have a comment, and I don't know if it's appropriate at this time or not, but I figured it's kind of subcommittee-esque, so I thought I might throw it in there. Subcommittee-esque, that's my Urban Dictionary word of the day. Over the past years, I've always kind of felt that if the town selectmen and each town's selectmen and each town's finance committee people, if they wanted, they should be kind of paying attention to our meetings and the decisions that we make, and we have minutes, and our meetings are all televised, and they could attend our lovely meetings with our not very populated population audience. And after the last couple of months, I think I might have changed my tune in my mind to say that I think we should ask each town's select board for us to be a monthly agenda item and have one of us go to that selectman meeting and present what we've done over the past month. And I don't know how best to do that in terms of on a subcommittee. I don't know if it could be 2 people from each town and we rotate, or so that it's a once every other month commitment of going to the selectmen's meetings. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if it's necessarily appropriate to have this conversation now. And I just feel that the selectmen feel like there's no communication, even though there's communication. And I think that if we say, hey, we'd like to be on your agenda on the first Monday of every month, and give an update as to what has been discussed, and maybe pass out one packet of the school improvement plans and the data that we just went over with the middle school and the elementary school, and then Chatham Elementary School from the last meeting, and they actually see this information, I think it would go a long way. So.
Any other comments?
Yeah. I agree with you, because I've been thinking about this myself and even wondered, I think this was during the candidate debate that we had in Harwich, one of the questions I put forth for the candidates for Board of Selectmen and for school committee was the idea of about a joint session, something where we're kind of heading some of these things off. I don't know what's been done in the past, but
We've
I was.
tried that.
Oh, okay. Well, I was thinking about that because I thought, you know, what efforts can we make regularly, like you're suggesting, so that when we get to the point of budget, we're not kind of climbing these mountains. So I would agree with the direction that you are suggesting. Very much agree.
I'd actually agree. I think it's a good idea. I know the regional school district that I came from actually had 2 joint FinCom meetings that, with the school district each year, and you'd have, I think there was far more connection between the committee and the select boards and the committee and the finance committees. And, and I know we had one, let's say, a rather contentious joint meeting, but I don't think we should, give up, because I do think that for, for this, marriage of 2 towns to really succeed in the long haul, and, and I was lucky to step into, my previous superintendency, 50 years into that marriage. I mean, they had already worked out a lot of those hiccups, and I think it's really important to, to help, sort of pave a smoother road forward. And I think it's going to take a lot of outreach to both of the towns and both of the, the select board and the FinCom in both of those towns, because they're in very different places, and I think at times we're sort of caught in the middle.
Agree.
I think most likely the Board of Selectmen are awfully busy, and that it would be probably more advantageous for us to see if we can get ourselves on a once-a-month cycle and getting on their agenda, if not for anything, but just an update and an opportunity for asking questions. And certainly as we get closer to budgeting season, which will be here before we know it, I think it would be important so that we are very transparent. I know that was a word that was used a lot this year, but I believe we always have been, but I think this would further that relationship with the 2 boards. I am wondering if maybe a possibility would be that the selectmen and finance, like the liaisons, if that actually became more of a subcommittee, and that maybe that's where this is created. But I think it's a discussion we can have once we figure out, unless you have other thoughts, Mrs. Scott, but I'm thinking that's kind of a direction we can go. And then I think we will reach out to the selectmen and see if this is a possibility to be on their agenda once a month as well.
Well, actually,
Mr. Russell?
I think it's a good idea also. Anything and everything we can do within reason is going to be a plus for ourselves in what we represent. And the thought I bring to it, to add a little meat to the bone, would be, I think, appropriate for and I don't know even if once a month is enough meat, but I see it's appropriate for the chair and the vice chair to be the 2 somewhat permanent people that go to represent the school committee. And the meetings that the superintendent has with the chair and the vice chair to create a weekly or every bi-weekly agenda meeting, that would be the time to add 1 topic or 2 that you'd bring forward to the select board. And myself, I think to begin with, it might be once every 2 months. That would be, 5 times a year, you'd be coming in as a familiar face to the select board. I really haven't given it too much thought about the finance committee. It has been kicked around, namely myself, to see what could be done in an August meeting where we have a summit between the groups, the school committee and the select boards, over some coffee and discussion about what are our goals for the next year, 2 items or 3. And also, as I mentioned, there's nothing like personal contact. That's how things are done. And you only do that when you have smaller sections of people meeting on a fairly regular basis, be it 3 times a year, that people walk away with not just their knowledge base that's raised, but a relationship between a couple of people saying, yeah, boy, they are seated for the interest of the kids, And so with those 2 thoughts, I think it'd be a nice step to add to our ability to signal our support.
Ms. Stout?
Yes, I'm hoping I'm not going to widen this too much, but we set our goals each year and have some workshop to try to figure out where we're going, usually in the summer. I see this as, not specifically, but of course the Finance Committee and the Selectmen are hugely important groups to communicate with. But I also would see this as a need to look at what other groups. And I totally agree with what you're saying, Terry, about that what we want to communicate to finance and selectmen, we want to make sure that they don't feel like it's a waste of their time, that we're not just there doing something. So, so this is a new effort, new thought. I think, yeah, we should probably look at this further and.
As somebody, I'm the chair of the Horticultural Council, and as somebody who does have some direct contact, I would really, I think I'm going to echo what the superintendent just said, that I don't see it as a wasted effort or wasting their time. And that's kind of that's just kind of in my head, the perception I have of this. It's really opening doors and creating that relationship and being the liaison, because there are questions. And I personally would like to have someone, like a Board of Selectmen or whomever it might be, come to me with a question rather than it circulating, out in the community. So I really hope that we'll consider this year of really creating these relationships so we can kind of, put some fires out before they become really big.
Yeah, great. Ms. Scott?
Follow up on what Tina was saying, I agree, and I think going to them, not just saying, do you have any questions, but going to them with information. If we were to go to Monday night's Harwich Selectmen's meeting, we could go in with Harwich Elementary School's packet presentation that Mary did and pull out some highlights and, give that to them, and then give some of the middle school highlights to them, in addition to anything that, major action items. Obviously, we don't have to present that we did surplus items at our meeting. But then I think also that at that time, they can ask questions and say, hey, we were wondering about this, and we don't have to feel the need to answer at that meeting. We can say, let me take that back and I will get this to you, get an answer to you for your next meeting. And I think that it's time that, being that there hasn't been any reachings out to us, that we reach out to them. And then, Jackie, you made the point of it being a subcommittee. I think it still would be liaison, because we're not meeting as a subcommittee to present to the selectmen. We would just be attending a selectmen's meeting and my vision when I was processing all of this over the last few weeks, and it kind of started back at Chatham Town meeting, but just thinking that we would like to actually be a agenda item on their actual agenda, not during, what does Harwich do at the beginning? Not public comment, and Harwich has at the beginning of their weekly briefings. Not a part of a weekly briefing, but an actual agenda item, because I think that we have a presentation to give as a part of their town. And it's not a town department presenting a weekly briefing. The school's presenting an agenda item and giving an update as to what's been happening either in our schools or at our meetings.
And going along with the same idea, I do think it's a great idea. But I do feel that we should have a common message. Obviously, the questions are going to be different, or not. But I think we have to have a common message, and so that each town, it again goes back to what you said, each town hears the same thing, and there's not that undercurrent. She said this here, but then that was said there. So I think we need to have some kind of a preparation piece.
Right, so I think we need to probably fine tune that, and perhaps, I think, what Dr. Harris, yeah, Mrs. Harris is saying, that we don't necessarily need to have a subcommittee, but that liaison of the selectmen finance might be a spot, or we have separate reporting liaison section, and then we'll figure out. If anyone's interested in that, you can certainly sign up or email me, or we can decide at our next meeting who those people will be. Ms. Stout?
Not on the Selectmen Finance Committee, but on this subcommittee representatives liaisons, occasionally we have some area or two on here where it's some of us or many of us have some interest in it, but we're kind of booked with other committees. And so I'll just pick on the collaborative, for instance, but I don't mean that one specifically. You know, maybe if no one particularly wants an area because they've got some other areas that they really want to pay a lot of attention to, maybe we could consider having a few people rotate on something. I've just seen that in a couple of these areas, they were left blank. Or it was a real strain on somebody to follow through. That's just a fact.
Thank you. I'm just going to comment that I think that the purpose of subcommittees is the continuity of the same people meeting and presenting and sharing all that information and working on something. So when you change up or rotate the people through the subcommittees, it may not be as effective, but there may be a subcommittee or two or three that are something that can be, you know, something that rotates. I don't know that I'd suggest the finance or negotiations, something like that would be something we should rotate people on, but there may be some of the other subcommittees we could look at.
I'm sorry, I wasn't that clear. I wasn't referring to any subcommittees. I was
Just
only referring to
representatives and
representative
liaisons. Okay. Okay, we can take a look at that. Any other questions regarding the subcommittee roles and school committee members? And if you can just fill out that sheet and get that to me, preferably the Monday before our next meeting, that would be great, so that I have some time to work on it. Our next up would be the superintendent's report.
Just a point, may I ask
Yes,
Madam
ma'am.
Chair? Okay, so just for clarification, so do you want us to just, do we have a limit?
You can fill
Or
yourself
is
in for
there
every
any-
square, Tina.
Woohoo,
Go ahead, girl.
everything.
Love it.
Everybody go have fun this year, I'll take care of it all.
I-
usually what we tell the new person to do.
I would put in your top, make sure I can tell what your
Okay.
top three are.
Okay.
And then I'd like to know where your other interests, you can even note on the bottom, just fill in your top three in the squares.
Okay.
And then note on the bottom, but I'd also be interested in, because obviously I'm not gonna be able to, if everyone has finance committee as their number one, I'm not gonna be able to put everybody there. So I'd like to, Joe's definitely gonna be on finance, so.
So wrestling match for
I'd like to just
policy.
have an idea so that I'm putting everyone where their interests are and where they want to be, and then maybe a couple, we're all gonna have to be a little flexible, on the other ones.
Thank you.
Sound okay? And of course, email me. I'm sorry, Leah? Send out a soft. Oh, great, thank you. Soft email coming from Leah. All right, now, any other questions? All right, moving on to the superintendent's report.
All right, just a few things. First, to sort of step backwards to my evaluation. I appreciate the feedback. I think actually for me, the recommendations or the concerns are easier on some level for me than the praise, in that I'm my own worst or biggest critic. So I beat myself up, I think, far more about things than I think anyone could ever say, publicly. So I will fully acknowledge Harwich Town meeting was not my greatest moment. There are things that in life I could do better there in terms of preparation. I definitely agree with the words that Tina shared, and I think the ideas that Terry and others put out there about public outreach, because I do think some of the highlights for me about this past year, was that sort of conversation with the superintendent. And we had more people show up for a random set of things, and I think we can do more of that. And I do think trying to find and build those bridges. I think where the nice words that people were speaking are at times challenging to hear is I feel that sometimes that it's undeserved praise. I appreciate it, but I mean this is such a blessing to be the superintendent here. I mean what I do is because I've got a great team that I work with. So I've got great administrators that I work with, and we have absolutely fabulous teachers in this school district. And you walk in that stage at convocation filled with community partners who are there giving $250,000 away in scholarships to our graduating seniors. It's when you have that sort of community support, despite at times how it feels at moments at a selectmen's meeting, or the buzz that you might hear at a grocery store. I think that we do have tremendous community support. And then lastly, I think we have just wonderful parents. For me, one of the highlights of my week was yesterday watching a lacrosse game, being a dad, absolutely forgetting my coat and freezing, and having one of our former graduates, Lizzie Pandicio, kindly bring me a pink Tinkerbell blanket so I could go and wear that while watching the game. And I'm sure that there's probably many a picture of me on Facebook wrapped in a Tinkerbell blanket. It's okay. I look good in pink. But that's what has always made this job so special to me and for me. So thank you, for your comments, and thank you for giving me a very clear direction on where to go as I develop my own goals for next year. Second, I would like to welcome Meredith, from the superintendent's standpoint publicly. A couple weeks ago, there was this big Fund Our Future march and on the Beacon Hill to sort of raise awareness of the need to increase the state funding for schools. And I put something out to our own staff that I'm glad that a number of them were going to be part of that number and to share the need to better support education. But I also put a challenge out there to our staff. And I said, I think it's really important, where you are and where you live in Massachusetts as educators to get involved in local politics. And I think to have an educator, an active educator, teacher at DY on our committee, I think helps us, and I think if that can happen on boards around the Cape and around the state, I think you'll find more educationally savvy people, because my worry becomes if we see more state aid coming to schools, unless you have select boards and finance committees that are willing to see the schools have that increased funding, there's just less town funding that comes to the schools and more of that money that ends up going to fund other projects. So there needs to be that sort of awareness. And I know you put in long days as a teacher, and I appreciate that you're willing to go and also put in some occasional long evenings. I'll try not to speak so long during most of my reports. I think Donna Richardson did a really good job of keeping us, on task. So I'm counting on Jackie to get us out of here, at least
Yep, every minute matters.
8:30. All right, I'll go faster. Third, I know that one of the things that we had in reporting out the strategic plan is volunteerism and where we're going, and I'm sure that in the next couple school committee meetings, you'll get some reports from Joy on some of the neat recognitions that she'll be doing, some ceremonies to appreciate all the volunteers that we've been tracking and bringing to the schools. So that's up and coming. Number 4, couple highlights of my week. I liked that Mary was a little busy today when I was over at Harwich Elementary School, and there was this cute little second grader in her office who just needed to have a little conversation with on it's not okay to go and call your friend fat. And they look, Mary looks at the girl and she's like, "Do you know what this is?" And she's like, "Yes." And so we had a long conversation on how to be nice to friends, and it was cute. But in terms of looping back, I think to Mark's presentation, Mark Smith and I, and Karen Gilmet, our athletics director, so Karen, we have getting into classrooms to try to tie what happens in our after-school athletics program to, what's happening in our gym classes in the district. So Mark and Karen and I were in middle school phys ed class, and it was neat to see some kids over on the far side of the gym on computers, and I walked over there and there was, each of them had their little brain frame that they were working on the history of, in this case, the couple kids that I was looking at, they were doing the history of basketball and working through that little sort of pre-planning before they actually wrote. So it was neat, that he was really emphasizing the whole school nature of that. And this was gym class, and they're writing and really developing writing skills in gym class. But if you really want to push things forward, it can't just be your English teacher. So again, it was sort of a neat thing to see. And last but not least, along the same lines in terms of better connecting us to our towns, and this gets to at least something I have in your packet. A sadness I had is that at both of our town meetings, there wasn't an acknowledgement that we, as a committee, lost one of our former committee members. And I really hope that we can get to a place. First of all, I hope that we don't have former members that we have to acknowledge in upcoming school committee, upcoming town meetings. But I had wished that there was a moment in Chatham to remember Glenn, and a moment in Harwich to remember Ed. And along that lines, I had mentioned that without spending school committee money, but I would like to see some sort of thing that we have go up on the wall in here in a frame. In my former district, we had something that would be in calligraphy, and I was working with Leah, has made a mock-up of what it could look like. We welcome your feedback on this, but we thought that it might be good to acknowledge that there was an interim regional school committee with some individuals that served some time, and then the school committee, and it's just an acknowledgement of those that have been here, including 3 members who are no longer with us.
Great, it looks great. Any comments, questions? All right, thank you very much.
I would just say, it would be good not to call this serving time.
What's that?
Although some nights it might feel that way.
Does it say serving time?
Serving time? Oh, you mean serving time
Serving
like
time on
prison
the
time?
Sometimes it feels like that.
Okay.
I mean, that should have stayed in my thought bubble, sorry.
Any other comments? Okay, great, thank you.
And just finally, graduation
Oh, yes.
Sunday, under the tent. It'll be sunny outside, 2 o'clock, 2 p.m.
Okay, great, thank you so much. Looks like we have 2 action items on the agenda tonight. The first is to move and approve the job description revision for the district accountant, which was presented as a second reading last week. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is approved. The second is declaration of surplus items. Do I see anyone who would like to do the declaration of surplus?
It usually falls to Meredith.
Yeah, it's.
Me too.
All right, let's give her a week. Let's go with Mrs. Gaines is gonna show her how it's done.
Oh, my
And
goodness, let me
then-
get organized then.
She only had to do it like twice.
I only did it.
You get to pick somebody this year, that's gonna be your surplus person.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion for the disposal of surplus materials estimated The first one estimated under $5,000. The first one being a Yamaha keyboard, 3 Yamaha keyboards, all 2004 in the music room at the middle school. So I'm going to make a motion that we accept, that we,
You can do them all together.
oh,
Yeah.
and
Declare them as surplus.
And-
items.
I'm going to also declare the disposal of surplus materials on the second page in your packet. This is from the Monomoy Regional High School concession stand. One is an Amana refrigerator, the second a Kenmore refrigerator, and the third is a Kenmore something that is broken. So I'm going to,
Just move that along.
yes,
Second.
make it a motion that we accept or do what are we doing?
Declare surplus.
Declare surplus, thank you.
Is there a motion?
She motioned, I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any abstains, abstentions? Okay, motion carried. And then the third is that the presentation of the warrants, is there a motion? We need to do a motion for that, or it just has to be on the agenda? Okay, great, motioning for nothing. All right, I think we've concluded everything. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second. Third.
All in favor?
Seconds jump in now.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
See how painless that was?
And then we turn.
Not for now, but in the future. Next year, I will try to